Yeah, so basically in the UK, how most people are saving into their private savings is through automatic enrollment and through their employers. So back in 2012, the government introduced this automatic enrollment policy, so employers now have to automatically enroll their employees into pension schemes. So that's been a really big success as a policy. So we've seen the pension participation rates increasing from less than a half to over 80%. So huge success. But the minimum default contribution rates that the government set in those policies is 8% of your qualifying earnings, which is even less than your total earnings. So basically we're seeing that majority of people, even with middle incomes, are saving less than 8% of their earnings into these schemes. And that's just driven by those default rates. And if we're thinking about what is a sufficient level of saving for higher earners, especially middle income earners, probably something closer to 12 or 15% of your earnings, which would be more appropriate. So that's really kind of the issue here, is that we've seen a lot more people are actually saving into pensions, a lot more people have pensions, that's great, but the amounts that are going into those private pensions are still pretty low.
So investors are acting like the ultimate passive investor here.
Oh,
the money's being contributed, right, and they're not doing very much around it. Is that because they think they can get a better return elsewhere? They're not necessarily trusting the company's scheme, what the fund manager is doing for that designated scheme, that they think perhaps if they invest in house, property, or perhaps even their own fixed income or investing accounts, they could do better than putting it into a pot?
So there is probably some of that, and we do see in some kind of surveys that people say that actually I think the best return that I'm going to get, the safest return that I'm going to get, is going to come from housing and property. But at the same time, we do see much lower home ownership rates among younger people. So it's not like they've all shifted into housing investments. I think what's really happening here is that because pension saving is such a difficult decision for people to make, to make the kind of right decisions or the optimal decisions about pension saving, how much you should be putting into your pension, you kind of want to know how long am I going to live? How long does that pension pot have to last? How long am I going to work for? What are my earnings going to be in the future? What are going to be some of the other priorities on my spending? So I think that's why, because it's such a complex decision, people just put it off and they just go with whatever their employer kind of tells them is the right contribution rate. And I think that's really the issue. And I think because it's a government set default rate, maybe there is this sense of, well, maybe the government sets it in a way that's the right level for me, even though we know that that's probably not the case. But I think there is this kind of sense of complacency when it comes to pension saving, especially among younger people.
Heidi, governments have played around with our pension allowance and the rules affecting pensions and when we can withdraw for as long as I've been in the workplace, which is well over 3 decades. I have to say I despair at some of the moves from the chancellors from the same party over the last 13 years as well. Do you think actually, rather than just worrying about those default rates as well, it's confusion at the other end actually about the people who want to invest more? And a lot of our viewers, I'll be brutally honest about it, are high net worth individuals who are just in despair about what the latest pension rules are. Do we have more clarity now than we've had for a long time, or is it still just as bad?
So, I mean, I think there is always, when it comes to pension saving, this issue that, of course, especially for kind of higher net worth individuals, there are going to be some limits on how much the government is going to give you in terms of.
Why should there be a limit, Heidi? If I have paid my tax, or I'm paying a large amount, why should I have to worry about the limit that I want to put in if I want to provide for my family? It just doesn't make sense to me.
So basically, the reason why we have these limits is that you get tax relief on those pension savings. So they are tax advantaged. It's also the case that they're tax advantaged, especially because you can take 25% of your pension pot of these defined contribution pension pots out tax-free. You can pass on defined contribution pension pots without inheritance tax. So basically, with these limits, what the government wants to do is to make sure that we're not giving huge payouts in terms of tax reliefs to the highest net worth individuals in the country, so that it's a bit of a fairer system for everyone. So that's kind of the rationale behind it.